Respected Mrs. Malti Sridharan, DITTP1, the inaugural speaker of the conference, Srimati Karishma Pattafekar, Shri Paresh Shah, Chairman, International Taxation Committee, Shri Ketan Vajani, Vice Chairman, Direct Taxes Committee, Shri Naresh Ajwani, Vice Chairman, International Taxation Committee, respected Arvind Bhai, Nihar Bhai, past presidents of the Chamber, other distinguished guests from the department, my colleagues and friends. Good morning and welcome to this conference on domestic transfer pricing. With the increase in cross-border transactions, particularly between associated enterprises, the applicability of transfer pricing provisions under the Income Tax Act gained importance. Transfer pricing regulations have been extended by Finance Act 2012 to include transactions entered into with domestic related parties or by an undertaking with other undertakings of the same entity for the purpose of Section 40A, Chapter 6A and Section 10AA. Domestic transfer pricing provisions are applicable from assessment year 2013-14 onwards. Further, rules relating to transfer pricing provisions and reporting Form 3CEB has also been amended. From financial year 2013-14, Form 3CEB is required to be filed through e-filing before the due date. All the compliance requirements such as transfer pricing, documentation, accountants' reports, etc. shall equally apply to specified domestic transactions as they do for international transactions amongst the associated enterprises. These amendments have impacted many assessees as the benchmark amount of specified transaction is kept at only 5 crores. My colleague on the dais will explain you in detail about the conference. As there are many non-members of the Chamber, I have a privilege to introduce to you the Chamber and make you known about its activities. Established in year 1926, the Chamber is not-for-profit organization which is mandate to disseminate knowledge in the field of taxation, corporate and allied laws, and accounting and finance. The Chamber caters to the need of the professionals both in practice as well as in industry. It has robust membership of more than 3,500 professionals comprising of advocates, chartered accountants, company secretaries and tax consultants. Chamber operates through various committees, each catering to a specific area. The committees organizes a program on various topics such as direct taxes, indirect taxes, international taxation, allied laws and corporate taxes. Knowledge sharing and dissemination is carried out through various conferences, seminars, study circles, study groups, residential refresher course and publications. Chamber also publishes a monthly journal titled The Chamber's Journal. The Chamber's Journal comprises of special stories which covers almost all aspects of a particular topic. Recent issue on the journal is on the subject of your interest, that is domestic transfer pricing. The journal is well appreciated by the readers and it finds place in the libraries across India. Chamber manages 2 libraries at prominent places like Aikar Bhavan and Pratyakshakar Bhavan, which are widely used by the professionals. The libraries have more than 4,000 titles and are all leading law journals and magazines. The Chamber is also active in making representations to Ministry of Finance and Tax Departments. In recent years, the Chamber has acted as catalyst and has contributed substantially to the development of better tax laws, administration and compliances. Above all, the members of the Chamber enjoy a unique bond of fellowship and brotherhood, and it is evident in all its activities and programs. With this brief remark, I would now request the dignitaries to come forward and light the lighting of the lamp and seek blessings of the Almighty. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. President of the Chamber, Mr. Yatin Desai, Honorable guest, DITTP1, Mrs. Malti Sridhar, learned speaker, Karishma Patrapekar, Ketan, Naresh, senior in the profession, ladies and gentlemen. Warm welcome to all of you on Saturday morning to this full day conference on domestic transfer pricing. Friends, President has already informed you about the specified domestic transaction provisions that they were introduced in 2012 by way of amendment of section 92, and we have seen the number of conferences, workshop, and much has been discussed about the provisions of the law, its understanding, nuances, but we found at Chamber that not much has been said on the practical aspects of the domestic transaction, the transfer pricing study, and the audit report. With this thought in mind, we requested senior professionals of the Bombay City to structure this program for us so that all of us can complete the challenges which are posed before us in a practical manner to resolve the issues of the TP study, to benchmark the transaction, and to issue the audit report as per the expectations of the industry and as per the expectations of the department. My special thanks to three learned professionals, Mr. Vismi Patel, Mrs. Karishma Patrapekar, and Sanjay Tolia, who has helped us to structure this program in a meaningful manner to consider all practical aspects of this conference. My special thanks to Madam Malti Sridharan, who readily agreed to make her gracious presence over here and address us a keynote. In a very short notice, she has agreed to our request and graced this occasion. And as we have been always in past, there is an active involvement of the tax department, and we had in past also had presence of the DIT tax pricing in our most of the conferences and most of our direct tax pricing long duration course. Friends, I have an honor to introduce our guest, honorable guest, Mrs. Malti Sridharan. She had been in the department right from 1989. She is the IRS officer of 1989 batch. For last 12 years, 13 years, she has been in Bombay. She has been the additional transfer pricing in the charge of assessment during the initial time when the transfer pricing provisions were introduced in 2001 for 2 years. Thereafter, she has been on and off, but within the same core area of transfer pricing. From 2005 to 2011, she has been working as a DR before the L bench, and she has been also a CIT appeal during this small stint of the period in 2012, and now we see her in the coveted post of the chairman, coveted post of DIT Transfer Pricing 1. We all know how important the post is and how responsibility it carries. With these words, friends, I present Madam Malti Sridharan for addressing us as a keynote. And before I do so, I request my President Yatin Desai to present a memento as a mark of our respect towards her. Madam, mic is yours.
Respected Mr. Yatin Desai, President of the Chamber, Mr. Paresh Shah, Chairman, International Taxation Committee, Mr. Naresh Ajwani, Vice Chairman, International Taxation Committee, Mr. Ketan Vajani, Vice Chairman, Direct Tax Committee, my friend Karishma Popat Phatre, and my dear friends in the audience. It is a matter of great pleasure and honor for me to be here with you all on this inaugural session of one-day seminar on domestic transfer pricing. I really do not know what has prompted these people to invite me for this session. In fact, I asked them what makes them think I am fit to inaugurate this session. They said it is not me, it is a post I carry. So as a representative of the department as DA transfer pricing, I am before you. I don't claim any special knowledge or any other credit to myself to entitle me to inaugurate this session. Of course, I have spent long number of years as DR in the ITAT, whether as junior AR, senior AR or CIT DR. So I never occupied any special post in the department which people would consider as coveted or anything. And so I never got invited to any of these sessions. This is the first time I am getting invited, and I am very happy about it to be here with all of you. As you are all aware, these provisions relating to domestic transfer pricing, they were enacted by the Finance Act 2012. Finance Act 2012, at least from the perspective of the department, was one of the major Finance Act which came with some far-reaching provisions, some retrospective amendments which have been widely debated, certain other provisions to streamline the provisions of the Act, and one of the provisions which was enacted in this was the domestic transfer pricing provisions. The so-called objective as stated in the memorandum explaining the provisions is that it seeks to bring objectivity in calculating the amount of deduction to be given to a person when they are interacting with a related party, or to bring objectivity or to put in place a proper mechanism, a scientific mechanism to determine the income on which exemption may be given to an assessee. So these have been the stated objectives in enacting these domestic transfer pricing provisions. If we step back and look, in fact, when we were in ITAT, many times we had to look at old case laws when we were trying to argue transfer pricing cases in the initial years, because now there are more than 300, 400 decisions on transfer pricing, reported decisions of ITAT. But when we started arguing the cases in the ITAT, at that time there were no decisions or nothing to give us any backing on either side. So we used to look at decisions on section 40A or under the earlier provisions of section 80I, 80J, 80E, where there were provisions for inter-unit transfer, etc. So we used to look at these provisions to give us some guidance. So if we look at some of those older provisions, we can see that there was always a need for these kind of provisions which will give a machinery or a mechanism to determine the amount of exemption that should be given to a person in respect of certain specified activities, or the way in which to calculate a deduction when a person is dealing with someone closely connected. For instance, if we look at the old provisions of section 80J or 80E, they did not have any provision akin to what we have in 80IA 8 and 10 now. 80IA 8 and 10, which is treated as the base provision now for all exemption provisions, it provides specifically as to how to determine the profits when there are intra-unit dealings of the same enterprise, or the enterprise deals with somebody closely connected to it. But no such provisions were there initially when 80J or 80E were enacted. So some innovative assessees had taken a plea before the tax department and then thereafter before the courts. When there were intra-unit transfers, say for instance they had a unit which supplied raw material to the unit which was exempt under 80I or 80E. They said this is a self-to-self transaction, therefore this transaction need not be taken into account, and in the process they claimed a deduction on the entire income of the exempt unit without reducing it to the extent of the cost of material supplied by a non-exempt unit. So they said it is a self-to-self transaction. They relied on old rulings, Kika by Premchand or these decisions to say that a self-to-self transaction need not be taken into account. So even at that time, even in the absence of any enabling provision similar to 80IA 8 or 10, the high courts have generally held that when you have to calculate the profit of an exempt unit, then you have to take into account all these inter-unit transfer. There was, however, still a debate whether these transfers should be taken into account at the cost price to the assessee or at a market price, a notional market price between the two units. High Court of Bombay said it can be at the cost. High Court of Gujarat said it should be at the market price. So still the debate was there. Thereafter, we had these provisions which were enacted in ATI. Excuse me. We have these provisions in ATI, ATIA now, where they say that when there is a transfer from one unit to another of the same enterprise, then they have to be valued at market price. I'm sorry. So as I said, the debate was always there, and even after the High Court stepped in to say that inter-unit transfer have to be taken into account, there was always the debate whether it should be at a cost or at the market value. Then these provisions in ATI, ATIA, etc. were enacted slowly one after the other. Then we have these disputes in section 40A, which is what we used to refer for all our TP matters initially. If you look at the various decisions on section 40A, again section 40A is again applicable only in respect of expenditure. It is not applicable in respect of income transactions. And even there the section says where in the opinion of the assessing officer it is excessive or unreasonable. So these words excessive or unreasonable was never defined in the statute. So there was always a dispute whether the opinion of the assessing officer that something is excessive or unreasonable having regard to the fair market value. Again, fair market value, the term was not defined in the statute anywhere. So there were a lot of disputes on this issue. Assessing officers have been extremely innovative. Whenever there have been loan transactions between close family members, they have been very prompt in taking recourse to section 40A, or we could have instances of property being rented out by one member of the family to the family firm. Assessing officers have been prompt to attack such transactions, or we could have salary or other remuneration paid to various close family members or other connected persons for services which may or may not have been rendered. So in all these cases section 40A has been referred to by the assessing officers and additions have been made, but most of the additions have been disputed before the court. And the one thing about these things is these are all issues primarily of facts. So not much matter travels to the High Court. Things get settled at the level of ITAT. So it is very difficult to evolve a substantial question of law on these matters. So these are all matters of factual verification. So one has to be very thorough on facts. Whether the assessee makes a claim or the department tries to disallow a claim, these are matters of factual verification. Then we had the section 80IA10 which talked of more than normal profits. 80IA10 has two distinct languages. Subsection 8 talks of inter-unit transfer which has to be at market price, and subsection 10 talks of more than normal profits when they are dealing with an associated enterprise, or that is a closely connected, two different persons but closely connected. So the concept is different in 80IA10 and it is different in 80IA8. I don't know why these different concepts have been kept by the legislature, but it is like that. So there also, what is more than normal profit, whether it should be the average profit or the lowest profit or the highest profit, there was not much clarity on all these things. So then we had similar provisions in section 92 before chapter 10 came, where again these problems were there. Even under the old 1922 Act, we had section 42, where the provisions of section 92 which were contained later were embodied, and that was probably borrowed from the British law. So such provisions have always been there in the Income Tax Act, and disputes have always arose on on interpretation of these provisions, and these are all matters of fact. And the person who could bring more facts on the table to show that the case is stronger on their side, they have generally succeeded. So all this only goes to show that the present provisions on domestic transfer pricing is very much needed in the in the Income Tax Act. Maybe you will feel as a tax person, I feel so, and that may be right also, that I cannot say I don't have the bias of a tax person. I may be carrying some bias definitely. But I feel, looking at all these aspects, that this domestic taxation provisions, the domestic transfer pricing provisions are very much a welcome provision in the Act. Now, having said that, whether it will really solve all the problems, I do not know. That depends largely on us, both the tax department as well as the consultants and the assessee community, how we go about it and how we put ourselves to the task. These provisions are saying that they will bring about objectivity. We all know transfer pricing, all of us admit every day that transfer pricing is highly subjective. So it is trying to bring some objectivity within the subjectivity. We cannot do away with the subjectivity in the subject of transfer pricing. So subjectivity will always be there. Initially, when the assessee claims that certain transactions is at arm's length, he is using some amount of subjectivity. When the tax consultant prepares the report and comes before the department and says, yes, for these reasons the transactions are at arm's length, there is subjectivity at that stage also. When the assessing officer accepts or disputes that, then also there is subjectivity. In transfer pricing, as you are all aware, all the orders passed by the transfer pricing officer are in fact approved by the DI transfer pricing. So I have been a transfer pricing officer in the past. So sometimes when we seek approval from when we used to seek approval from our DI for the transfer pricing cases, we had to step into the shoes of the consultant. We had to say why we are accepting the arm's length price of the transaction, why we are not making an adjustment. So there again we were trying to take a subjective argument. And if we disputed the arm's length price determined by the assessee, then it becomes even more subjective because then it has to stand the test of law. What the assessee states, he can supplement with more and more facts at various stages. At assessment level, he can give something. At CIT appeal level, he can give something. At ITAT, he can still supplement something. Plus, he has a junior consultant at the stage of assessment, slightly senior consultant at the stage of CIT appeal, and a senior counsel at the level of ITAT, and an even better counsel at a higher level. So they can improve upon their case from time to time, but the department's case is restricted to the order. So whatever subjectivity is there, they have to always deal with it at all stages. So whatever we are doing now, whatever we are trying to achieve is only to reduce the subjectivity within the overall thing. I don't think it can become a totally objective thing. Now whether these provisions will really give relief, I don't know. We have to go forward. But what we have already seen, when we started doing transfer pricing in 2002-03, we had large number of cases of software cases. Then when we started doing the transfer pricing cases, transfer pricing assessments of these cases, we found that there was not shifting of profits from India to outside India. Rather, very often there was shifting of profits from outside India into India. The main reason for the shifting of profit is that everything was exempt under 10A or 10B or other provisions in India in respect of software, whereas they were liable to pay tax at a high rate, maybe in US or UK or in European countries. So there was really no incentive for these, more particularly the Indian multinationals, there was no incentive as such to shift profits outside India, rather the incentive was to shift it to India. So we used to find many cases where they were exempt under 10A or 10B, showing very high margin. They would say the comparables margin is 22% or 18%. The comparable margin is generally kept as low as possible. If I am also a tax practitioner, I will try to keep it as low as possible. So it would range between 8 to 12, 13%, never beyond that. And assessee's margin were generally shown as 35%, 40%, sometimes we would have even 80%. And if it is calculated as a ratio of cost, it would cross even 2 digits. It will be in 3 digits also, the profit markup on cost. So then in some of these cases, transfer pricing officers made a remark that the profit is excessive. Maybe the 10A, 10B claim is also on the excessive side. So assessing officers in those cases where the transactions were subjected to TP under the TP provisions after 2002-03, the assessing officers tried to reduce the claim of deduction under section 10A or 10B, relying on the TP analysis. Now what the AOs did, probably they didn't do any hard work after that. They said you yourself, the hapless assessee wanted to present a good picture before the department, transfer pricing officer. So he said 14 is the margin of the comparables and my margin is 80%. Now this was caught by the assessing officer. They said, oh, your arm's length margin is only 14%. You are disclosing 80%, so rest is not arm's length margin, it is more than normal profits. So they tried to deny the deduction under 10A or 10B for the differential from 14 to 80% or whatever the assessee was showing. But even here we find there are at least 20-30 decisions of the tribunal reported on this issue, that even with the TP provisions in place, which was clearly applicable in respect of those transactions, we have not been able to achieve any clarity or any clear-headedness on this issue. various grounds have been taken. Associates have said merely because I have been more efficient, you cannot say this is more than normal profit. This is a profit attributable to my efficiency. Sometimes they said the transfer pricing officer has not changed my 10A claim. How can the assessing officer claim? I don't know how the transfer pricing officer is supposed to change the 10A claim. But this is an argument which has been made and accepted by the court. Sometimes they have said TP methods are profit-based methods as well as price-based methods. Price-based methods are not concerned with profits, whereas in 10A, 10B we are concerned with more than normal profits. So a method based on price cannot be applied to determine this. Then the tribunal has come up in some cases to say an arm's length margin, arm's length profit or an arm's length price is not equivalent to normal profits or more than normal profits. So all these issues still remained even after the TP provisions were in place, and they were applicable in respect of these cases. So now with the domestic transfer pricing provisions, probably there is little bit more refinement in respect of these transactions, where they have said that arm's length price will be taken into account for determining the profits in respect of these specified transactions. So despite the TP provisions being in place, I don't foresee that all disputes will come to an end. Disputes will still be there because we as a society, we like to dispute everything. If you do something, the assessing officer will dispute. If the assessing officer does something, the taxpayer will dispute. So we like to dispute, that is good for all of us. That is not a problem. So I don't think the disputes are going to come to an end even after putting these domestic taxation provisions, domestic transfer provisions, pricing provisions in place. Still problems will be there. Another thing, I don't know, under section 40A you say various expenses will be allowed based on these transfer pricing provisions. If we look at the transfer pricing experience, more than 80% initially and now more than 90% of the cases we go for what is called the transactional net margin method. Now in this method, you can use it as a method to justify anything. You can use it as a method to justify even a loss. You can use it as a method to justify any profit margin by taking any comparable, whatever you can readily lay your hands on. But whether this method can ever be used to determine the actual arm's length price for an expenditure which is being claimed, I have my doubts about that. Very often we do an entity level TNMM whenever it suits either party. If it suits the assessee, they do an entity level TNMM. If it suits the department, they also do an entity level TNMM. And you say either the transactions are at arm's length or you want to make an adjustment. But whenever we have done that, we are now, it is very difficult to work back to a price of a specific transaction. And more so if the value of transaction vis-a-vis the overall business activity of the assessee is not very significant. That is, if the turnover is running into hundreds of crores and we are talking of a 10 crore or 20 crore transaction, then to determine an arm's length price of that transaction using TNMM method is going to be very difficult. So all this is okay for a foreign multinational company because they are equipped to deal with all this. They have done their global transfer pricing study beforehand. They have dealt with this problem in number of tax jurisdictions for the last 20-30 years. We are just new infants right now in this field. So an Indian assessee, how much he or she will be equipped to deal with this kind of problem, we have to keep in mind that also, because we are after all a very new entrant into this field. The MNC companies have been dealing with this in various tax jurisdictions for the last many years, 20-30 years. So I have my doubts as to how the transfer pricing methods can be used for determining a claim under section 40A. As long as it is to accept a transaction at arm's length, everything is okay. But the moment you disturb a transaction and you say a transaction is not at arm's length, then applying any of the method becomes extremely difficult. So these are issues which still we have to grapple with. Then as far as what is a mechanism within the department to deal with domestic transfer pricing, I don't know. I am totally involved with my transfer pricing relating to international transactions. So far there is nothing in place to say whether the transactions will be referred to the transfer pricing officer or whether the assessing officer will do it himself. Things are not yet in place. Of course, for you the returns are due, so your job has already started. For us, we have 1 year time to pick up the case on scrutiny, and thereafter further extended time to complete the assessment if it is referred to TPO. So our what you can say, backward counting has not started as yet. We still feel we have a lot of time. So our procedure is still not in place, but it will be in place in due course. But whether or not our position is in place, whether it is going to be referred to the directorate, TP directorate or not, the all-powerful assessing officer is already enabled. Whenever he wants, wherever he wants, once you file the return, the assessing officer is always having the power under the new provisions to apply the TP provisions the way he or she understands and make an adjustment if they are not satisfied. So I think this one-day seminar that you have organized for this domestic transfer pricing issue is really very timely, and I think the assessee should be really helped to put their transactions in place. It was suggested before I started this brief this thing that maybe I should tell what the department expects from the assessee, or what the department expects from the chartered accountants or the consultants. I must confess at the outset that whatever I know on transfer pricing, I have learned from you all. We did not have any training. If I have done something shortcut, that is because I have seen you doing the shortcut. If I have done something good, that is also because I have seen people have done something very nice in their transfer pricing audit. So I have copied that. So really for me to give you any feedback, because we look at the professionals, we see what they are doing and learn from them. Karishma here, I know her since she was a young girl, not married at that time, and I have learned from her, and like that there are many people who came before me, who argued cases before me. And I have learned from all of them. I have learned the value, particularly from the Big Four firm, of keeping to time. However late it may be, by 6 o'clock if I have given a date, they have always complied at the end of the day with their reply. It may be faxed to me at 6 o'clock, but still they will try to comply. They may give reply on 3 questions out of the 10, but still they will give some reply by 6 o'clock. So I have also tried to imbibe all these qualities. So I may fix 3 cases, but still at least 1 case I will hear by the end of the day. And excuse myself for the remaining 2. So really I don't know what advice I can impart to you all, because we look up to the professionals to come up with something and we take the cue from there. But all the same, since I have been asked and you all have assembled here, from my limited experience, what I have seen is that if the basic documentation of a transaction is properly maintained, and if the essence of the transaction can be put across properly to the transfer pricing officer, I think half your battle is won. We have a tendency both among the officers, I tell my officers also not to jump to the conclusion. They want to jump to TNM method or some other method at the first instance itself. First itself they want to say, madam, we can reject these 3 loss-making companies and we can make an adjustment here. So that is the attitude of all of us, to jump to the conclusion. Similarly, even when assessees come before us and they argue, they want to go to the conclusion, they immediately say TNM method or some other method, and my margin are comparable and things like that. So, but whatever I have felt from my limited experience, I feel that if you can really explain the core of a transaction with basic documents, say the agreement with the other party, what transactions you have actually transpired, and if you could really build your documentation from that level, then whether or not you have made a profit or loss from the transaction, it is always much easier to explain such transactions. In the first year of transfer pricing, there were many cases where they were represented by the assessees themselves. No Big Four firm came, nobody came to represent them. There were cases where there were hardly any comparable transactions available. But still, we were convinced in many of those cases that there was no transfer pricing adjustment required, even when there were losses, because they were able to explain to us what were the business considerations and other factors which resulted in the loss. And therefore we have not made adjustments in many such cases. You may find that difficult to believe, but I am telling, this is an academic forum, so I don't need to hide anything from anybody. So generally we have been convinced. Another thing I find that whenever we have seen the assessees themselves directly beyond the consultants, and if the assessee have explained their business properly, we feel more easy to be, we find it more easy to get convinced rather than hear everything from the consultant. So if you have an assessee who can project his case properly, if he is smart also, there is no problem in taking him to the tax office. He knows what to say, what not to say. If he is not smart, but still you feel he has a genuine case, even then I think it will serve the purpose if you take the assessee along with you to the tax office and make him put his facts before the tax office. We have generally been favorably impressed whenever the assessees have come forward before us. I had a case of Zodiac, or I think it was a case of Zodiac. where I was quite convinced that an adjustment was warranted in that case. In fact, initially I put up the file without an adjustment. My DI said, no, there is an adjustment. Some commission has been paid to a Switzerland entity. Switzerland is a low tax jurisdiction. Though this commission of 10 crore ought to be disallowed. Please investigate more. So from the month of March till the month of February, I investigated that case. We asked for more and more information. Finally, the assessee brought not merely his managing director or somebody, he brought some of the foreign foreigners who were doing marketing of his product in various parts of Europe. And they came before us and they gave documents and they produced the details to show that actually they are doing marketing for the Zodiac brand in various, what you call this, mall, big outlets. They were making for various other, putting the brand name of various other persons and manufacturing for them. And a lot of commission was paid for doing this marketing. So we were suspecting that commission is not at arm's length because it was paid to a Swiss entity. That prejudice is there. The moment you see Switzerland, the moment you see Singapore, the moment you see some other tax haven like British Virgin Island, you feel something is wrong there. We start with that presumption. But when they brought all this, then I was convinced. We did not make any adjustment. Even my DI was convinced. So if your assessee can project his case properly, then I would say that it pays to take the assessee. Generally, there is a feeling that you should not take the assessee at all to the tax office, keep him behind and only consultant comes. Many times we are doing various foreign banks, we are insisting that the assessee come, but the assessees are never allowed to come. The consultant insists on presenting the case himself or herself. So I would feel personally that no harm is there if the assessee is also taken along. Sometimes the assessee may show his vulnerability or his genuineness more effectively than the consultant. So if you have a good case and if you think the assessee is even reasonably articulate enough to put his case across, then it pays to take the assessee. And the only other thing, as I already told you, that if your documentations are good, then you don't need fancy methods, you don't need fancy databases. Your case can succeed without the help of various databases, and you don't need any jargon. Transfer pricing is, lot of jargons are there in transfer pricing. You say this benchmarking. Very often we don't know what this benchmarking exactly means. Then somebody will say PLI. I have taken this PLI. Then Berry ratio. For a long time I wondered what is Berry got to do with this ratio. But these terms are there in transfer pricing. So one has to live with all these terms. But I would suggest that if your core substance of the transaction is well documented in terms of documentary evidence, then you don't need recourse to any of these technicalities. Your case can sail through even without all that. So with that, I think I have bored all of you enough. And just as the Big Four firm have really made a big name in international transfer pricing, it is my wish and hope. I see a lot of young people here. I see some bright-faced young girls. So I would, it is my sincere hope that in domestic transfer pricing, domestic firms should also do very well. And just as Big Four firm has made a very good name and they have established a very good reputation in terms of international transfer pricing, in domestic transfer pricing, domestic firms should have similar name and similar capacity building, and they should guide the department just as the Big Four has guided us. So with that, I wish all the best. I have seen the program schedule for the day. It is very nicely scheduled, and I think many of the problems which I feel are a problem and I shared with you, probably all those things can be sorted out, or there could be some solution to all these issues which you will discuss in the course of the day. So with that, I inaugurate this session, and I hope you have a fruitful day today. Thank you.
Thank you for this enlightening talk as an inaugural session. Madam has rightly said that the big four firms have made their name in international transfer pricing, and so a wish expressed by Madam that the domestic firms should come to that level as far as this DTP is concerned. That was in fact the precise object behind this whole conference with which we started this idea of this conference, and we'll learn today many things. Of course, this may not be the end of the things, but this may be the beginning of our learning. So we should take it in that fashion, and if we make it that way, probably we will have a better case with us and we'll be able to represent rightly with the department as Madam has rightly expected from us. With that small remark, I have a pleasant task of introducing the first technical speaker for today's session, Ms. Karishma Phatrapekar. She is a fellow chartered accountant and also a certified public accountant from USA. She has the experience in the field of transfer pricing for almost 14 years. One can say right from the age when the transfer pricing provisions were introduced in India, right from that, she has been working in this field. Earlier, she was with PwC, and for around 5 years she was with PwC, and thereafter, since 2009, she has been with, 2004, I'm sorry. Since 2004, she is with Grant Thornton, and as of now, she is the head of the transfer pricing division of Grant Thornton India. She is focused on the group of transfer pricing, and she specializes in this field since 2000. She has advised a large number of renowned multinational and Indian companies in structuring the planning, intra-company transfers, etc. Some of her clients' name, just to name a few, are Glenmark, Larsen & Toubro, Venfo, Rolta, Mercury Pharma, Nokia Group, etc. Apart from transfer pricing, her exposure is including the tax and regulatory of compliance of international tax, inbound and outbound investments, etc. Her specialization in the sector-wise specialization is pharmaceutical and information technology area, and she has been a member of the European Business Group and Chamber of Tax Consultants. She has presented lot many papers all across India on the subject of transfer pricing and addressed various seminars. She is a regular writer on various papers on this subject. A very rich experience which we are all looking forward to, and looking to a very good session. In today's session, she will be dealing with overview of the emergence of transfer pricing SDT provisions and also scope of SDT and interplay between specified domestic transfer pricing and the transfer pricing provisions. Also with reference to UN and OECD commentary. With this brief introduction, I present before you Ms. Karishma Phatrapekar, and before she takes the session, I would request our President Yatin Bhai to please offer a memento to Ms. Karishma.
So good morning to all of you all and all the members on the dais. Malti ma'am, thank you for the wonderful beginning. I was really impressed. Thank you for acknowledging me as a young girl starting transfer pricing. I would still want to believe I'm young though. But we have, as she has been modest, I must say that we have also all learned transfer pricing through them. So it's an iterative process, because had they not done or had they not approached this whole subject in the way they have been in the past several years, we would have not been challenged to think innovatively. Just before she started the session, we were discussing, and I completely agree with her, the Indian style of working is to think differently, to try something differently. We are not process driven, she was mentioning. And I think that is really the result of the entire transfer pricing regime and the development that has taken place over the last several years. I would personally want to believe and really commend the tax department as well as the professionals, the way transfer pricing has gone about. We've progressed much faster and more effectively than some of the other advanced regimes like US and UK, where transfer pricing has been in place for more than 50 years. So really I feel that I also wish, though I have been associated always with an international firm, but on the heart and core I am a chartered accountant, and I also surely wish that with the emergence of domestic transfer pricing, this will surely come up with a lot of opportunity.